And we are preparing to go live on Facebook. What's up, dude?
Dude, I'm just a little disappointed I didn't get the memo about military gear. I've got some old stuff that I could have worn today, man.
Anytime I know that it's whoever I'm talking to it's gonna be intense, I gotta prepare.
That's right. That's right.
For this one. Listen, I don't know what's gonna happen. I just know, as my friend Rib says, he's a Navy SEAL Steve and I met on our motorcycle ride from Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
And a funny story is in the mornings, we were riding from Dallas to Vegas, or I stopped in Phoenix, but that's 500 miles a day, and a motorcycle's a lot.
Yeah.
And we were in some pretty acclimate weather. I have issues with my hands based on some stuff. So I was always about 15 minutes early with all my stuff by the door, because to get on the bike and get all my stuff on, it takes me an extra second.
A little bit more of a challenge, yeah.
It's more of a challenge, and I don't want to be left behind. And I'd always have it'd be me and this guy, Michael Riviera, would be at the door. And I'd always be ready. And I'm like, come on, man, where is everybody? And he said a quote to me. He goes, if you stay ready, you never have to get ready.
There you go.
I was like, oh, I love it. I'm ready. So today.
You are ready.
Hey, dude, I'm absolutely ready. Ladies and gentlemen, for today's guest, a good friend, longtime compatriot in the battle for good, Mr. Ryan Michler of Order of Man. Good morning, brother.
I'm glad to be here, man. I'm honored. It's just good, man. Every time we have a conversation, we have some good conversation for sure.
Dude, let me phrase it this way. For people that don't know who you are, we run in some of the same social circles, but for people that don't know who you are, you're a father, you're a best-selling author, you're a podcast host, you're a champion of men's movements, you're a veteran, you're a social media influencer. You're doing a lot of things. If I were not to introduce you and I pulled that back, how do you introduce yourself and say what it is you do?
That's a good question. Usually I don't really get into it a whole lot. Actually, what I do, I'll get to that answer because I know what you're looking for there. But at the end of the day, like I'm a dad, I'm a husband, and I want to be a good man. That's it. And I want to help other guys be good men too. So people ask me a lot of times, like, well, what is it that you do? I help men become better men, better leaders, better communicators, better husbands, better fathers, better business owners, community leaders, you name it. If you're a man and you want to improve in some capacity in your life, it's my ambition to help you do that. And I'm not the expert. I'm not the guru. I don't have it all figured out. I've never positioned myself as someone who says, come follow me. I know everything and I know the way. I've really positioned myself as a guy who wants to improve himself, right? And I'm on this journey, and if you want to join me on this journey and stand shoulder to shoulder, let's do it together. And I think that's the reason that we've had so much momentum and so much growth within the Order of Man and what we're doing, is because it's a brotherhood, it's a fraternity, it's an organization of men who are working together, shoulder to shoulder, like I said, against a common enemy or towards a common objective, and that is becoming a better man.
Well, let me ask you this, because that's a great lead in right into where we're going. Let's talk about men. Let's talk about fatherhood. Let's talk about the role your dad played in what you're doing.
Yeah.
Was your dad active? Is he around? What was that relationship like coming up?
No, my dad was out of the picture by the time I was 3 years old. We stayed somewhat close. I would go in the summer and visit him and do the thing. And I remember doing Legos with him, and that was always a blast. And we'd go fishing, and there was glimpses like that, but frankly, he just wasn't around. We were separated by geography and then just emotionally as well. So that was kind of a challenging thing for me. I had a couple stepdads come into my life, and that was a challenge. One was an alcoholic, one was verbally and emotionally abusive. So I never really had this great example of what it meant to be a man, especially how he shows up for his kids, and especially how he shows up for his wife, my mother. So it was a challenge. And that challenge manifested itself a lot of ways when I was early in my marriage. My wife and I went through a separation that was pretty tough and pretty challenging, but that completely altered my perspective and reality, not just within the marriage, but life in general, and how I approached my job as a man. I had a 6-month-old son at the time, so she left. She took my son with her. It was a challenging time. But long story short, I've worked through a lot of that, and I figured a lot of that out, and we can talk more about that. But we've got 4 kids. I'll be married this year is 14 years. So, think the business is growing. Things are good. And it's because of the principles that I've learned and applied. Unfortunately, I just didn't learn them early. I learned them later in life and had to learn a lot of those things the hard way.
I think you said a couple of things that are really, let's unpack them, Ryan. You said, we talk about the dad, the fatherhood. I had a similar but very different set of circumstances. My mother and father separated. I went with my dad. I bounced around a ton, and my dad just worked so damn much that it was hard.
Yeah.
And I was a deviant, man. I was just out there skateboarding and doing crazy stuff and left to my own device. But I think you and I had a very similar. This is actually how you and I met. Was we had a very similar path cross where everything got ripped out from underneath us, and part of that was tied to relationships with our children and with our spouse, and then which makes us reflect on ourselves if we're paying attention. Yeah, the first video I saw of yours, is it 3 years now, 2 years? The one where
probably about 3 years ago.
Yeah, where you talked in depth about what that looked like, right? What that relationship was. And I've got to say, dude, from I'll try to find it and we'll put it in the show notes, but it was really around a time and a place where when you see strong men acknowledge, hey, I made a mistake, you don't see that a lot, let alone in a public setting. And I think, one of the things that I've always honored about you is that ability to be able to share the truth and honor those emotional commitments to others.
I appreciate it. And it's a challenge. Obviously, anytime you put yourself out there and you expose yourself to the things that you did wrong, it's really easy to blame her and everybody else and my boss and the economy and this and that. It's easy to do that stuff. But the reality is very, very few circumstances where that's actually true. And we do it to keep our ego intact. But yeah, it is a challenge. But I feel like it's important because there's a lot of men out there wandering around without the answer, without the solution, without the mindset for growth in their lives. And if I have a story, I feel obligated to share that regardless of how difficult it is. If I have something that I've learned and experienced personally, and I can share that with 1 or 10 or 100,000 or 1,000,000 men, and it will improve their life, then yeah, I've got a moral obligation to share that story. That's why we're here, to help each other along on this journey that we call life.
When did you find that social media was that platform to share that voice?
I had another podcast that I was doing with my financial planning practice, and I did about 20 episodes, and I really enjoyed the medium of podcasting, but I wanted to have a completely different conversation. So in March of 2015, I switched gears with the podcast, and that's when I launched Order of Man. Yep. And that's when I ran into you guys like Sean Whalen, Andy Frisilla, a lot of the guys you said we run in similar circles, that these guys were, doing it using social media. And I dabbled at first. I did the podcast and I had Facebook pages and things like that. And then I learned I can't remember where I listened to it. I was listening to a podcast and the guy came on, he's like, hey, Facebook groups is where it's at. And so I did a little research. I'm like, okay, cool. Let's try it. And when I really got involved with Facebook groups, that opened up a world of opportunity, not with just Facebook, but social media in general. And I really learned how powerful these mediums of Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and YouTube, you name it. Even podcasting is social to a degree, how powerful these things can actually be to connect people who would normally never have connected in a lifetime. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah. So some of my closest friends to date now have come from my relationships on social.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of people say, oh, it's destroying relationships. And it's not. It's just a way to, because I go to conferences like Meltdown and some of these others. Your event's going to be awesome. And I see, hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of people that I've friended or I've commented on their Facebook stuff. And then you go to an event like yours and you're like, oh, now I have a face with a name, and we can actually have a real in-depth conversation based on the only digital version I know of you, right?
Well, what I've noticed is in those scenarios, the rapport part goes away and we can get right into the meat. Like there doesn't have to be this awkward social dance of who you are and me trying to figure you out, because I've been watching what you do for a few years.
Yeah.
Well, let me rewind and unpack a little bit of this. You have a dad, he's there, circumstances change, mom gets remarried a few times, puts you in this unique scenario and vision point of what it means to be a father and a man.
Sure.
You get married, you come into it with your perspective, a fallout happens, everything kind of stops and resets, and you say, man, I got to start this. This has got to be where I start to show up. Not that you weren't showing up before, but you were going to take.
No, it's true. I wasn't.
Right.
Just being real. That's what it was.
I went through the same thing. Right. And as you go through, I'm going to show up now. I think a very interesting thing happens. Either men do or men don't. Right. And I don't know why that is. I think it's the moral compass. Like I got full custody of our oldest daughter when she was 1. She was still in diapers, where people say, well, how did you do it? I just didn't see another way to do it. I didn't have an option.
What's the alternative, right?
Do, right.
Right.
But for me, it was being a husband was always the tough part. I can be a dad. Like I'm good at that. It's like, how do I commit myself and be what I need to be in a family structure, and learning those things. You learn these things, you have this moment. Order of Man is formed. It's now a group online in total reach. You're over 30,000 in the group, but when you look at the podcast downloads and all these things, how big is the Order of Man reach? And then tell people here, what is Order of Man?
Yeah, so we've got actually 43,000 people in the group now. I think we're just about to crack 44,000.
Nice.
We get 300,000+ downloads on the podcast each month. We've got another 30 to 40,000 people on 2 different platforms on Instagram, another roughly 9,000 on Twitter. So, if you had to combine it all, I mean, probably 500,000 or so, maybe more people are tuning in each and every week to what we're doing. Which is really, really cool. Like, I would have never thought, I mean, 3 years ago, that's a short period of time. I would have never thought that life would be what it is today. It's absolutely incredible. Not only from the perspective of me and my family and how things are working for us, but how I'm able to impact other people. And I get messages every day from guys who are like, dude, I've been listening to the podcast for 2 years, or that video you just put out, I went through that exact same situation and you gave me a few pointers that I hadn't really considered or thought about. It's pretty cool. And so to answer the second part of that question with what is Order of Man, it is a community. It's a brotherhood. We're working together to figure this stuff out. And so if you're a man and you're thinking, man, I've got relationship issues, or, I need to lose 30 pounds, or I feel this like looming and general sense of dissatisfaction in my life, and I can't quite pinpoint why I'm miserable or unhappy or unsatisfied or unfulfilled with my work. These are all things that men are experiencing, and this is the solution, genuinely the solution. And I'm not saying I'm the solution. I'm saying this is the solution. My goal is to create the largest brotherhood of men to help lift each other up and push each other along and give each other the kick in the ass that we need sometimes as men.
So what I'm hearing is you feel strongly there's maybe a lack of male presence today in the market.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the word market's interesting. I think. Let me
not use that, because I think I have to define that. Let's say, do you feel maybe there's a lack of male presence in families, business, fatherhood, and the general sense as to how we see and kind of perceive what's going on around us?
100%. I mean, you look at the amount of divorces just as one metric, and it's significantly higher than it was, and there's skewed data on that. I mean, there's 2 different sides of that. But I think the reality is that even if a man is present in the home, he's not really all that like emotionally present and there. You see children being born out of wedlock. You see divorces, and you see so much going on where men, frankly, aren't in the picture. And so what's happening is a lot of our younger generations are growing up without a masculine presence in their lives. And then you have this thing from society's standpoint. Again, this is just generally speaking, where I don't want to say it's necessarily an assault, although I have seen some stuff where I would consider it an assault or an attack. But I think generally speaking, it's probably just more of a dismissal. Like, oh, masculinity is outdated, it's antiquated, it's not needed in modern times. And so let's go ahead and emasculate these men and turn all these men into women. Yeah. And it's just a really interesting thing. But the reason that we are in this situation is because life is pretty good. Just generally across the world, life is pretty good. From a health perspective, we're healthier than we've ever been. We're more wealthy than we've ever been. I was looking at the GDP per individual for the last like 2,000 years, and it's been the same up until like the mid 1800s, and it just exploded. And so the amount of income, the amount of wealth, the amount of our quality of life, our health and living conditions, our relatively low rates of poverty, life is good. And so it's easy to complain about these things saying, oh, it's not needed in modern times. What's really fascinating, though, is when shit goes bad, that's where we remember where masculinity comes in, because that's what we're designed to do. We're bigger, we're faster, we're stronger. Again, I'm speaking in generalities. And that's all for a reason. There's different hormones and chemicals running through our bodies as men and women for a reason. And so you see the example I use is these hurricanes that we had last year. Nobody complained about toxic masculinity when thousands and thousands of men were driving into Texas with their trucks and their boats and rescuing people and doing what men do. Nobody was complaining about toxic masculinity down in California when they had those big fires. And men and women too were going down there and doing what they needed to do to rescue people and save homes and fight that fire. It's when things go bad that people recognize how much masculinity is needed. And what happens in general is society is not cultivating that masculinity when times are good. Yeah. So I'm a little worried about when times are bad because we just don't know how to behave like men.
I mean, there's this big, I think we as a species, just humans are getting, I mean, we get lazy in a lot of senses. I mean, just to change a car tire and basic, like a carburetor, like basic things that we should probably know how to do, cook, iron. I mean, those are things my dad taught me how to do.
Yeah.
It's just interesting to see, because we get so dependent on so many different things. Longer conversation than our time today, but it's
there's laziness, but there's also complacency, right?
Yes. Yep.
When I was in Iraq, we had this sign that read as we left the gate. It said, "Complacency kills."
True.
Literally, in this situation, literally will kill you. In much of society, complacency won't. The complacency, for example, with your health, may not kill you immediately, but you pack on a few pounds here and there, and 30 years from now, you'll look back and think, "Man, what the hell did I do with my life?"
That's right.
Just because you were complacent and you didn't need the 6-pack abs in order to type away at the keyboard, which was your job. So that complacency is really a hindrance when times get challenging.
Define sovereignty for me. What does that mean?
Sovereignty is ownership, right? I mean, a lot of people look at it from a religious concept or a secular concept, and they look at it in society and think, oh, we're a sovereign state or a sovereign nation or a sovereign religion. I mean, that certainly, but I think it's more of individual sovereignty, which means that you and I individually have ownership over our own life. And that's something that we have to voluntarily give away. There's a great book called, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. He was a psychologist in a concentration camp. And, you read that book and you look at someone who's in the most horrific circumstance that any human has ever known.
Yep.
And yet he never gave up control of his sovereignty, which is that he makes his own choices. He decides how he's going to think and behave and act, even though he's in a horrific situation. And what's interesting is you see men and women across the planet give away their sovereignty every time they blame their boss or their colleague or their coworkers or the economy, why they're underperforming. So the sovereignty is about reclaiming the power that comes from making your own choices and taking ownership of your thoughts, your beliefs, and your actions, and also the consequences that come from those things.
Absolutely. Leads to the title of your latest best-selling book. By the way, one of my favorite covers to date. Like, it's just so well designed.
Yeah, I had a good design. I can't take credit for that, man. I had a great designer who came in and just killed it with that cover.
Such a beautiful cover. So the process of writing a book, I'll have you back on and we'll go into the creative things because I think there's a lot to be said around writing your book, into podcasting, creating a group. There's a ton of stuff that you do that adds just a tremendous amount of value. If you take a step back, the beard and the manhood is at the front. The mind and the brain and the soul behind it has so much complexity to it, dude. It's like I always love to see how you create your groups, why you create your groups, how often are you in there? What's the website look like? What are the podcasting? Like there's a lot of things that people can learn from a pure strategy perspective if they're paying attention.
I hope so.
There is. I mean, Tony Robbins has one of my favorite quotes, which is success leaves clues. And it's like, there's a lot of things I'm always looking and paying attention to what's happening, especially in our space and who's doing what, not to keep up, but you're always like, we're always pushing each other to do something a little bit more, right? From how we're showing up on social to the platforms that we're on. So
to the headgear that we wear,
to the helmet,
which you one-upped me today for sure. You like 10-upped me today, man.
I don't know. You got the hat on. It's my favorite hat is the one you're wearing, and I wore it on so many motorcycle rides, dude. I got to buy another one. It's I love when people say stuff about the flat brim. I got one word for you. I'm trying to think of a good one that's not a good word.
I'll tell you what, though. I mean,
I love it when that's what people say. Flat brim. I wear a flat brim. Like, shut up.
No, look, from a marketing standpoint, like we're talking about marketing here for a second. From a marketing standpoint, like this has sold me more flat brims and curved brims than ever. Because I've got in our group 44,000 guys arguing about what's better, flat brim or curved brim. So I come out with a flat brim and I like promote it as a flat brim. And the curved brim guys are like, oh, and the flat brim guys are like, oh, I'm buying that. And then I come out with a curved brim and the flat brimmers are like, oh, that sucks. And the curved brimmers are like, yeah, I'll show you. So like from a marketing perspective,
brilliant.
It's genius, dude. And I wish I could say I deliberately thought about that, but I learned that after the fact.
That is so funny. Let me ask you this about the book really quick. So how long did the book take to write? And then tell me one thing that through that process has really stood out for you.
Yeah, so I decided to like quadruple down on this thing. I wrote 63,000 words in 60 days.
Wow.
So that's not to say the book process was done in that time, but the writing of the book was 60 days. But all in, I was probably about 6 months of hard work and strategy and getting the designer and learning how the flow works. And we had a couple little mishaps with releasing it on Amazon and stuff, which we will work through now. But yeah, all in 6 months. The one thing I learned is that all of the strategy stuff, I think, is relatively easy in comparison to actually putting the words on paper or on the computer screen. So for me, it was really about consistency. If somebody's listening to this and they're thinking, man, I want to write a book, I would just challenge you to write between 500 to 1,000 words per day. Just do that. Get the other stuff worked out, the design and the fulfillment, get that stuff worked out. But you've got to write 500 to 1,000 words per day. And I lean more towards 1,000 because what I noticed is when I wrote 500 words, it was like molasses. I was like trying to struggle through it. But once I got to like 400, 500, 600 words, I was like, and I could just crank it out. So I would just say get to that 1,000 words per day, and 30 days, 45, 60 days, you're going to have a fully written rough manuscript in your hand. And then, you can tweak and edit and change from there, but just write. You got to write every single day.
That's it. What's one thing that came out of the book writing process after you published it that kind of took you by surprise that you were like, wow, I didn't see that coming?
It's just weird, man. Like there's not a better word than that. It's just weird that I see on Facebook or Instagram and men are holding up this book and they're like, man, this has changed my life. Or the one that I love getting is like, Ryan, like I didn't really learn anything new necessarily, but you just like spoke to my heart. Like you spoke right. Like these are things that I've been feeling and experiencing, and I didn't know how to write them down or articulate them. And that to me means that I did a good job because I got right to the issues, right to the heart of the matter. And I know a lot of the book stings a little bit. It's not me preaching to the choir or standing up on a pedestal. It's not anything like that. It's just simply things that I've learned the hard way. And I shared that. And when guys send me messages and they say, man, this book spoke to me. And the other really surprising thing is I actually get a lot of messages from women who will reach out and they'll say, hey, I just want you to know, like, my husband read your book and he is a new man. Like, I don't know what you wrote in that book. I don't know what you shared, but he's a better husband, or he's a better father, or I've never seen him so inspired or motivated. And to me, I'm like, dude, if the women in these guys' lives are recognizing this, that's amazing, man. That's incredible. I'm honored and inspired.
All the work we do, if just one person is impacted, then it was never done in vain. The hundreds of videos and all the time and the book, right? And the podcast. If only one person can say, because that one person could go on to affect millions. You just don't know, or impact millions. We don't know. We don't know who's going to hear something. And your reach is so wide. And I think the mission that you're pushing is so here's where I don't want people to get caught up is this isn't a chauvinism thing around men. What this is in order for us to be better as men, because we are men, we'll speak from our perspective, is we've got to be better fathers. We've got to be better husbands. We've got to be better to ourselves and our health and our wealth and our relationships, period. And a lot of times we neglect those. What you do is provide tactical experience through podcasting, through your book, and how you show up on how to do that, right? We need that more than ever. I think in anything we want to be good at, you've chosen the skill set of being a man. That's what you know about. And I commend that, dude.
Well, and here's how I look at it. When a woman supports, I used to say let's, but let's not the right word. It supports. When a woman supports and honors her husband or just men, her sons, brothers, friends, colleagues, fathers, as men, the world is a better place. And the opposite is also true. When a man honors his women and supports them and uplifts them in being strong, motivated, capable women, the world is a better place. Yeah. So men aren't better than women. Women aren't better than men. We're different. We're unique. We bring, generally speaking, our own unique element to the equation. Both are much needed. But I know nothing about being a woman, so I've just decided to focus on being a man.
It's weird. This hormone therapies, people don't know is your name used to be Wilhelmina. You started taking hormones.
It's pretty crazy with his beard what all those therapy sessions can do, man. This is an implant, actually. So
it is. I need one, dude. it's what I heard from that is we're better together. And when we support each other through
100%.
our activities, we do way more together than we do independently.
100%.
I love it. Well, let's finish up with this, my man. You've done 160 podcasts.
Roughly. Yeah. Give or take.
So you put, I know Tim Ferriss hasn't been on the show yet.
We'll get him.
I know he's got to be on your list. Tim Ferriss and Tim Kennedy are alone on an island for a week. Who survives?
Oh, Tim Kennedy.
That dude is a beast.
He is nuts. Well, he's got a new show coming out called like Hard to Kill, I think, or something like that, where it's unscripted and they literally try to kill him. Like, have you seen this?
I saw that he got the pilot picked up.
Yeah, dude, it's like he doesn't even know what he's getting himself into. I saw one where he was trapped on a boat and they light the boat on fire and he's like, he's got to get out of the boat. And I think at the end of the day, he probably just tears a hole in the thing and swims out. But I don't know what he does. But yeah, it's called Hard or Harder to Kill, something like that.
I love it. So out of the 160 guests, I'm not going to ask you who your favorite is. What's one guest that stands out from you as like a turning point where you knew that the podcast was kind of taking shape?
Oh man, Cal, that's a good question. Jocko, obviously, I've had him on a couple of times.
Yep.
By
the way, you got Jocko before Jocko really he kind of hit that circuit, right?
I will say like I've been pretty cognizant of who's gonna hit it. You know what I mean? Like who's going to hit it. And if I can get him on beforehand, that's pretty cool. Like I actually had an interview with Jordan Peterson lined up right after he did that Kathy Newman episode. Unfortunately we couldn't work it out with his book schedule and everything else. But like the timing on that was impeccable. Cause that's real. Like he had kind of exploded a little bit. And then he really, when that Kathy Newman episode hit.
Do you want to explain that to people who haven't seen it?
Yeah, go Google it. I mean, it's this woman who, gosh, I almost feel bad for her. She interviewed him. I think she's in.
Well, who is he? Tell people who he is.
Oh, Jordan Peterson. Yeah, he's a clinical psychologist out of, I hope that's right, out of Canada. And I mean, the guy is absolutely incredible and very logical about the things that he sees and the things that he believes and takes hardline stances. And I think it's pretty incredible, some of the stuff that he's done. Unfortunately, I didn't have him on the podcast. We're still working on that. That's just a matter of time. Who
do you want on that you haven't had on yet?
Mike Rowe would be really good. I think he's somebody I'd really admire.
Such a stud.
Such a cool, like really down to earth, really humble. Just seems like a genuine person. Jordan Peterson would be on there. The Rock, if you're going to swing for the fences, like really swing for it. I'd love to have him on. His level of dedication and commitment and work ethic and his mind has just got to be pretty incredible. I'd love to have him on the show. So, man, I'm swinging for the fences. You need
to toss Will Smith in there now too.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's another
See
good
what Will's doing on Instagram, like his new, his kind of awakening and share. He's found that platform and understands how to use it. His Instagram stories are pretty heavy right now.
They're cool. He's done some good stuff.
He's doing some interesting things. That'd be another one. Yeah. My brother, it's honor. It's been an honor. It's been an absolute privilege. I appreciate you spending some of your time with us this morning. In conclusion, where can people find you? What are the best avenues and websites people can go find your stuff?
Yeah, so our headquarters is orderofman.com, so you can find us there. I'd also encourage you, if you listen to podcasts, to just type in Order of Man, whether it's iTunes or Stitcher or SoundCloud or Google Play, wherever, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts, type that in and listen. We've done, like you said, 160 episodes. I've done another 100 or so like solo shows. So we're almost at like 250 shows, which is crazy, but we've got something for every man out there for sure. And we'd love to connect with you.
Love it. Anything in closing, dude, that's passionate or something you want a little nugget of advice you want to leave for the viewers today or listeners?
The only thing I would say is it's really easy to become what our mutual friend Andy Frisella calls a success zombie or a learning zombie, where it's like consume, listen to this podcast, read this blog, read this book, and then nothing ever comes of it. And it's good. You got to research, you got to study, you got to know what you're doing to some degree. But at the end of the day, the people who thrive and succeed are the ones who take that step, that first step. You don't need to solve all of life's problems. Just one step. What does that look like? Take that one step. When you get that figured out, take the next step and the next step and the next step. So I'd encourage you to walk away, however you're listening to this conversation, and just get out. I always have a notepad handy, but just get out a notepad and say, here's 2 things that I'm going to do because Kolby and Ryan had this conversation, and then crank it out. Shoot Kolby a message, shoot me a message. Hey, I listened to your interview. This is what I did. This is how it enhanced my life. Just get to work. Just take some action.
Love it, dude. Love it. Appreciate you, my man. I will, I've got some special stuff planned for this year's meltdown. I'm hoping you're going to come, and I'll talk to you more about it later.
Dude, it's on the calendar. My wife and I sat down
Are
last
you bringing
week.
the whole family?
Yeah, I think they're going to come as well. They came last time too. So, but it's on the calendar. We're going to be there, man. What are the dates though?
June 22nd, 23rd, 24th.
It's going to be hot, but it's going to be awesome.
Well, I didn't want to plug the event. Last year you were there. I know we had some mishaps because we had the building shut down because of the heat.
Yeah, but that's part of the story, man. That's part of the fun.
It wouldn't have been anywhere. I would have had it no other way. So Ryan is a Meltdown alum. And when you can call your friends to jump on shows and you can call them to come in and like, you don't even tell them what it is. You're like, hey man, I got this thing. Can you just show up? And they just show up and don't know what it is. It's that says a lot about what it is you're doing where people can trust you. And I got some special stuff planned for you this year. So I need to make sure you're there.
Right on.
And with that, my friends, as always, if you found any value in today's message between our conversation with Ryan Michler of Order of Man, share, tag, or subscribe any which way you kind of grab and consume this. I know we're streaming on Facebook. This gets redistributed across lots of platforms. So with that, have an amazing Monday. Be good to yourself. Be good to other people. Call your mom. See you.